weapons empower drug cartels in Mexico to intimidate local communities, challenge state authority, and expand their deadly drug trade back into the United States. And tragically, some of these weapons have been used against Mexican security forces bravely seeking to capture cartel leaders who are responsible for so much death and destruction both in Mexico and in the United States. That's why we at the Department of Justice have ramped up our efforts to combat this challenge in 4 essential ways. First, under Director Dettelbach's leadership, we've increased joint operations with our Mexican law enforcement partners through Operation Southbound, the department's signature initiative to disrupt trafficking of firearms into Mexico. Since its creation, Operation Southbound has deployed 9 firearms trafficking task forces to 8 cities across and along the southwest border. Focused on trafficking of firearms to Mexico, these teams include partners from Homeland Security Investigations, Customs and Border Protection, and state and local law enforcement, as well as prosecutors across the U.S. Attorney community and the department's criminal division. As a result of these combined efforts, nearly 2,000 firearms were seized from last October to just this past March. That's a more than 65% increase over the same period last year. And over 80,000 rounds of ammunition were seized during that same period, also a substantial increase from last year. Today, we are convening representatives from across the law enforcement community, and we've gathered here the ATF leadership and U.S. attorneys that are driving that success. I want to thank you in advance for the sustained commitment, the energy, and the initiative that we will need and we will carry forth to build on in the days ahead. Second, in partnership with the government of Mexico, we've expanded access to the ATF's e-trace system to enable Mexican law enforcement to quickly track the origin and the purchaser of crime guns. In the last several months, nearly 12,000 traces were submitted to ATF by Mexican government agencies, and over 1/3 of those were successfully traced to a purchaser. Third, last year the Department of Justice established a new cartel weapons trafficking group along the southwest border. This is led by U.S. attorneys, and it's already taken concerted action against firearms trafficking networks. And lastly, we're using new criminal authorities established by the bipartisan Safer Communities Act to identify and hold firearms traffickers accountable. Our agents and prosecutors have now charged over 100 defendants with violations of these new firearms trafficking or straw purchasing provisions, and in some cases, they've charged both. The firearms trafficking provision has proven particularly useful at the southwest border, as more than half of all cases charging these new offenses have been brought by border state U.S. attorneys. There are many important investigations that the U.S. attorneys here today will highlight, including a joint ATF and HSI investigation that resulted in the arrest of Michael Bacasegua Barriga, the alleged leader of a prolific transnational firearms trafficking group based in Nogales, Sonora. Barriga was arrested in May in partnership with the Mexican FGR and is being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Arizona. And another example of your collective efforts is the prosecution of Roberto Lugardo Moreno in the Southern District of Texas. This is a case that was made possible by the cooperation with Mexican law enforcement officials. Moreno, who has pleaded guilty, straw purchased an AR-15 in Texas that was transported to Mexico and linked to the notorious kidnapping and brazen murder of U.S. citizens in Matamoros just a few months ago. These are just 2 examples of the outstanding work that U.S. and Mexican law enforcement are performing every single day to combat cartels, trafficking organizations, and violent crime. But we must do more. Together with our partners across government, including Deputy Secretary Tien and Ambassador Salazar, we're committed to deepening our coordination and enhancing our efforts to protect our communities. So I want to challenge us all who are here today to redouble our efforts in a few different ways. First, we know that data-driven efforts yield better results. To successfully combat firearms trafficking, we need reliable, actionable data that can be shared in real time. To help drive this effort, I've designated a senior prosecutor in my office, Mike Benari, who's here with us today, to lead this process and to identify new opportunities to foster cooperation and data sharing. Second, we've got to maintain the momentum in disrupting southbound firearms trafficking during the summer months. This means pooling our collective resources to continue gaining ground on the cartels and those who arm them. And third, it is absolutely critical that we continue to strengthen our cooperation with our Mexican partners. In conversations that I've had with the highest levels of Mexican law enforcement, I've confirmed that we are aligned on the firearms challenge and the need to do more. Recently, Mexican Attorney General Gertz and his Deputy Attorney General Gallo established a vetted unit to work exclusively on firearms trafficking and to focus on strategic enforcement. By working with this new unit, we hope to increase information sharing and, importantly, access to seized firearms. That information, in turn, will allow us to trace these weapons to their source in the United States and identify the networks that are trafficking them into Mexico. In just a few months, senior officials from Mexico and the United States will gather for the U.S.-Mexico high-level security dialogue. And there we will focus on our shared security interests, including combating firearms trafficking. So as I close, I just want to say thank you again to all of my colleagues who are here today. Through the work by you and your teams, we are showing our resolve in going after violent gun trafficking networks. And I'm confident with your continued leadership, we will pursue and enhance and really underscore our vital work to keep our communities safe. Thank you very much.